My best memory, my best story about John McCain, it would be difficult to come up with just one. Um, Such a towering figure in so many people's lives, certainly in mine. I had the opportunity to spend a number of occasions with him in his office, one-on-one, talking about, in my case, the war in Afghanistan. Had the occasion to testify before the Senate Armed Services Committee when he was chairman, which was always, we called that high adventure. It was always unique, but he was a great leader in ferreting out the detail that the American people both wanted to know and deserved to have. He was great in that regard. And then there were the occasions when we saw him in theater, when he would arrive with a congressional delegation, which he would lead. And I have many memories of those visits, but I think one of the ones that for me was so wonderful was the occasion where, as was often the case, he arrived in the middle of the night at Kabul airport. And the ride had been difficult. I don't recall where he had originated from, but it had been a long trip. And I believe it was from somewhere in the Gulf. And he was quite tired. We were all tired after those trips. And he got off the aircraft with the rest of the congressional delegation. And I remember Senator Graham took me aside before we were to get into our transportation to head over from the Kabul airport to my headquarters, which was not a small flight, actually, by Black Hawk helicopter. And the weather was really marginal when he landed. Now, the big transports could get in, but it was not clear that the helicopters could fly. And we were waiting to get a final determination on the air. And Senator McCain got off the aircraft. It was a long flight. He was clearly tired. And Senator Graham took me aside and said, he's got some real hard questions for you, or words to that effect. And I expected that. I was the commander of a war effort. And then we got the word that the helos weren't going to fly. We were not going to take Black Hawks to the headquarters, which meant we were going to go by ground. And we were going to end up with us going in a convoy of armored SUVs, armored Suburbans. And I can remember looking at Senator Graham when I told him that we were going to go by armored Suburban. And he looked at me and said, "You're in the middle, in the back seat. And it's me on one side, Graham on one side, and Senator McCain on the other side." And I thought to myself, I'm not sure whether I'd rather be in the back seat or take the Taliban head on in some kind of a frontal assault somewhere in Afghanistan, because it didn't look like this was going to be a fun ride one way or the other. So we got to the back of the Suburban, and off we went through, in the middle of the night, off we went through the streets of Kabul, headed towards my headquarters. And it started off a bit tense, a bit testy with the questions. But look, as was always the case with Senator John McCain, he's a great leader, extraordinarily compassionate leader. He loved the troops, and by God, he held us accountable for their welfare, their well-being, their safety, held us accountable for how the war was going to be waged so we'd be successful. And we got to the other side of the trip, and we got out of the vehicle, and where I thought I wasn't either going to survive the trip or get killed by the Taliban, we got out of the vehicle, and it was ended up being a very pleasant ride. And my respect for him, as I listened to him talk about the inherent responsibilities of a commander to be not just successful in combat, not just fulfill our nation's expectations for the successful accomplishment of the campaign, but to talk about the inherent responsibility of a commander to take care of the troops and to bring as many of them back alive. I got out of that SUV, and I had been taken to school by a great American for the entire trip from Kabul International Airport to my headquarters, the ISAF headquarters in downtown Kabul. I'll never forget that. The lighting was dark. I couldn't really tell who was on either side of me. Senator Graham was pretty quiet. Came in every now and again with a helpful quip to lighten the mood. But I just remember the voice of John McCain throughout that trip, becoming more fatherly as we had the conversation. Started off as senator, started off as chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, ended up being very fatherly. And it was a wonderful trip. And while I've got many memories of this great man, many memories of this great American patriot, I think that is one of the ones that will certainly be sustained in my memory the rest of my life.